Hello everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning as per your time zone. I know many of them joined from the various regions. It's a virtual session. Welcome to Bella Vista and Sydney Salesforce Developer Group virtual session. Once again, thank you for registering and joining the today's session. We have Banindra, he is CTO and then Salesforce MEP with us sharing about the data cloud for the developers. Little bit about myself. Madis, and I'm working as a senior Salesforce developer in TechForce Service, and I am also for the Bella Vista in Sydney, Australia. I'm actively available in the social channels, so you can reach out to me any of my social channels. Use the chat window for the Q&A, and we'll discuss. Without further delay, I'm hand over to Panindra. Over to you, Pani. Please share your screen and go get your session. I'm stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Shakti, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I know you have plenty of things, and I think there's a long weekend, especially people who are sitting in Singapore, because we have a holiday tomorrow and day after, and then Saturday, Sunday. So we're pretty excited and start my, for the next evenings with my colleagues and the NA friends. So I'll share my screen, and then Shakti, can you just help me out? You can hear me clearly, right?
Yes, yeah, I can.
Okay, perfect. All right. So if any trouble in between, just let me know, and then I'll happy to adjust my Wi-Fi or any other stuff. All right.
That's perfect. And even the audience, if you struggle with the audio, maybe I suggest you can and then join again. Yeah.
Yes. Hi everyone. Once again, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I know you've been joining from different continents altogether, and thank you for all for joining us in today's session. And then hope by this session you can learn something out of which for sure. That's what I can promise for that. Coming to myself Anindra, and I'm based out of Singapore, and I'm a Salesforce MVP and a 2 times marketing champion. And I manage a Singapore Salesforce Marketers Group as well as a Slack community group leader. So you could reach out to me on my LinkedIn, Fanindra Argishetta, and then you could reach out to me on Twitter at Argishetta. The introduction of Data Cloud. And so this session particularly, we're going to talk about development kind of concepts in Data Cloud, and especially on API libraries, SDKs, and what kind of methods Data Cloud provides by Connect API and web interactions, mobile interactions. We can talk about how to integrate Data Cloud with websites to build a real-time streaming interactions from websites. At the same time, how we can connect Data Cloud to mobile to bring the mobile events back to Data Cloud to personalize the customer's behavior and the data that we could leverage for them to target on a different personalization activities through Marketing Cloud. And we'll talk about how we can access the Data Cloud data model, which is nothing but the data model objects, the data model entities within the objects through an Apex. And we'll talk about what are all the calculated insights available in Data Cloud, and then how we could query the calculated insights, how we could access the calculated insights through an API called Calculated Insights API through an Apex programming language. And I have some resources, or some of the great resources that I would love to share it with today. And finally, if any questions and answers, if anyone has any questions, feel free to message in the chat conversation. In between, I'm going to pick these questions, or else at the end of the session, happy to take those questions as well, right? And finally, thank you once again for joining. So let's talk about something, the data, power of data, right? And why we bring Data Cloud as the most important factor that you wish to understand. I work with many of the trailblazers in my entire career for the last quite more than 8-9 years. Every time when I'm interacting with trailblazers, so trailblazers working with different various companies, some of them has been working on enterprise companies, some of them working on small, medium ESMB businesses. Always the biggest question from the management is, hey Sakti, hey Funny, would love to, would love to take free our resources by 67% for the data model unification solution. So do you have any solutions? The biggest question. Funny, we do working with big enterprise companies, they have different sources of data sitting in different systems. Do you recommend anything that can save our time? Do you recommend anything to bring some AI into the picture to help us for cost reduction across their entire organization? The same question asked me as funny, can you increase some automations? Can you increase our productivity in terms of selling, in terms of buying through an automations? Can you save some time for us? Can you free up some resources? Can you free up some some technologies? Can you free up some tools which you can bring together and then free up our entire system of resources to decrease our costing, to manage our manpower efficiently, right? So these are all some of the questions where day to day I listen from a lot of leaders. At the same time, I listen from our own trailblazers. With that, you already knows that, like, so in the current ecosystem, or when you go as you are a trailblazer, as you are a person who have been traveling to all across the world, even when you go to your shopping center, when you do a purchase, that is the data. When you go to any mall and you purchase any of your wallets or bracelets, so that's the data. That's your transaction. So when you go to your kids' school, so you want to pay certain schools for your kids amount, right? And you give your consent, and then you're going to pay the bills. That's called your data. So if you go anywhere, when you do comments, when you do touch points, when you do POS, when you do all those different devices which you could pay up for, it's all data. Believe me, so it's all like more data than ever currently in the current ecosystem, because now with the COVID and all this kind of a thing, we more used to have an online rather than offline, right? So we're gonna build, purchase everything through an online, which generates plenty of data, millions of data, 100 gigabytes of data. That's cloud by 2025. Imagine 100 gigabytes. That's a huge. So to bringing all this together, so we always have companies, we always have an applications have been spending their whole amount of time to design, to build, and testing the custom integrations. Take me an example. We're working with in my entire career, I've been working with some of the enterprise companies where I personally worked on 15 to 20 applications which are belongs to AWS, TIBCO, and I worked on a couple of retail platform called Informatica Power Center. I worked on TPG, worked on a couple of other applications like open source, Python. So I've been working on different systems of applications, different systems of storage kind of platforms, hosting platforms, and working on AWS, especially on this the machine learning programs within the AWS. So if you look at this many applications you've been running on, and the IT is spending too much time on your plenty of systems altogether, the volume of data you're targeting your databases has been huge, and you have your own siloed systems. It costs your integration times, the maintenance cost, security and compliance, the technical expertise to be find out from across all this applications that you have been covering, that you have been supporting throughout your career. But before this, when we're working as a company, what I believe is the average company has spent almost like 976 different applications. So company has believe they have different platforms altogether. They have different applications altogether. At last, what are you bringing together with the customer experience? That's what most important factor for us. The customers also expecting companies to anticipate the needs to come as a quick as need. So they want something quick to be developed. They want something quick to see some quick wins. They want some kind of an integrated tool to be able to quickly connect their source systems to bring the data. They want some tool which can connectivity to multiple applications like mobile apps, web apps, and then they want a scalability of the application to scale up to connecting the same resulting data back to different systems to manage their analytics. And they want extensibility of the platform to connect their data to be traveled to multiple other enterprise systems. Called, when you design your data model, that data model to be sustainable at the same time should be available to third-party called AWS systems, and the data should be available in Snowflake. And that's a kind of a systems where companies nowadays have been expecting for. With all this kind of a thing which is happening in the current real-time world, we are bringing together a powerful platform called Salesforce Data Cloud. It's one of it's a game changer for what I believe, especially on the current market. And this is one of the biggest innovative that what Salesforce has been introducing for, if you look at for the last 4 or 5 months, the entire buzz is happening with the data cloud, and you really understand what data cloud does, what data cloud provides, especially on bring the value adds for the customers. So what data cloud does is it'll connect and harmonize all your customers' data at a scale. At the same time, it designs all the data to be sitting in one system of sorts, and that creates a unified record that brings a lot of potential advantages for the marketers, that brings the potential advantages for the marketeers, and that brings the potential advantages for the data engineers, that brings the potential advantages for the analytics teams. That brings the power of data to create one unified record which could leverage for multiple targeting channels. You could use that one single record for targeting it to your emails, your customer mobiles, push notifications, and whole across. You could do plenty of personalization things at a scale, right? So with this, the data cloud, so if you look at the typical Salesforce platform, you always needs to be understand how Customer 360 design using our world's number one CRM called Salesforce. You are in the market, you are in the current ecosystem where you know the fundamentals of Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Commerce Cloud, Loyalty Cloud, Tableau, MuleSoft, Slack, Commerce Cloud, Consumer Goods Cloud, Manufacturing Cloud. So there's different clouds altogether, right? So our fundamental principle, fundamental structure of our Salesforce native, if you believe the real game changer after the Hyperforce at what I've seen, because Hyperforce I've seen from almost like 1-2 years, the buzz is happening, and they've deployed Hyperforce to multiple countries, which includes Singapore is one of the country where all our Salesforce orgs currently has been sitting in Hyperforce. And there is one more country which is Thailand, the Indonesia, and currently India also have an Hyperforce, and there are 13 countries have been piloted and then they went live with Hyperforce. That's a game changer for one of the traditional Salesforce CRM system that what we have. And on top of Hyperforce, we have the data, what we're calling as a transactional database, which are our accounts, contacts, opportunities, quotations, contracts, all is being calling as a transactional database because that's what the real live data that what we are trying to create on a day-to-day basis. At the same time, we are trying to update the database and trying to tweaks all this data, which is calling as a transactional data. On top of which you could leverage Einstein AI. We could design our own using our prediction builder. You could define some set of readings, targets, and all this stuff. On top, we have the flow automations to automate the business process using our own metadata elements, right? So, but the biggest question, so when you're asking about, when I told about funny, I've told data cloud is scalability wise and the extensibility wise top notch. Yes, it is. So when you look at the traditional data cloud sits in the current data model of Salesforce structure. If you look at the real-time data, the data cloud has been sit besides the transactional database to access the data, because the people, currently the Salesforce folks who knows the flows, who knows the fundamentals of Apex, who knows the integration patterns, it is exactly the same where you could access the data cloud data model back to your transactional database. Imagine I'm a sales guy leveraging my Salesforce platform, and I'm working on a deal, I'm working on a lead, and at the same time, I felt like, so this different leads have been coming into my system with the same information, but I do got first name, last name, but by my colleague got first name, last name, email, and I got phone number, of course. So ideally, we do have, the multiple, we do have a multiple data duplication mechanism, our matching rules, our engagement rules, where we could stop the duplicates of leads. But we do define the primary keys when we doing a duplicacy, right? Using the email as a phone number. Believe if you have multiple leads have been coming into the platform, and so the same data that we're traveling and sending back to data cloud to build a unique record of my first name, last name, my email, phone number, and everything. So the same data will come back to my Salesforce, which I could use one single source of record, and that record where I could use as my customer 360. Imagine if you look at, right, so you're querying the data from data cloud, and then you're going to build your own custom customer 360, right? On top of which, using the same data cloud data, where you could feed that into a real-time Einstein and real-time predictions, and you could use the same data model of Data Cloud using flow automations, and you could do much more things using the Data Cloud. And as you know, complete Data Cloud stack currently has been sitting in Hyperforce, because Data Cloud is such a huge data cloud, such a huge number of transactions have been flowing into Data Cloud. Imagine I've been working with a customer almost so been pushing almost 70 million records of data into Data Cloud. Still the count is being growing up, but out of 70 million, I'm getting only 21 million of unified records which came across their systems. So that's what the power of Data Cloud provides. At the same time, in order to bring all this hyper scalable running application, you need a great system to run your entire system. That will sits on Hyperforce. Hyperforce is AWS platform. Their entire Data Cloud architecture has been sitting on AWS platforms, and which runs the entire operations across AWS, and that sits on Hyperforce as well. So that's where Hyperforce is one of the game changers for us to host our Data Cloud, to run the fast processing operations, at the same time to bring the best of customer expectations as well. So this is how the Data Cloud works its magic. So what it does is, so it brings the data sources of first-party, third-party data, of your own CRM data, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Loyalty, Commerce Cloud, and then it brings out the external third-party data of your AWS, your Google Cloud Storage, and you could bring data from MuleSoft, and you could bring the data from different web and mobile applications, which could connect all through the connectors, and then you could perform the batch and streaming ingestion data, and then you could harmonize the data, design your data models using our best CIM information model, and then you could just design your unification of single source of truth. With this, you have plenty of options in order to design the unified record. You do have your reconciliation rules, you have your matching rules. Believe me, when you want to work with the Data Cloud, you just need an administrative guy. You just need a data guy. You don't require a developer to do all those things. In order to set up the platform, in order to design the platform, I don't believe that any developer is required to do all this. I just need some admin who knows the data stuff. That data engineer can does all these things. He is the one who build matching rules, reconciliation rules. He's the one who designs segmentations. He's the one who designs the calculative insights. And then he just uses data to send to Tableau for creating more analytics. And then he's the one who is going to send this data back to marketing cloud systems for marketers to leverage the data of unification to target their customers in a real-time world with the different channels across email, SMS, push notifications. And at the same time, you could use the same data, because I've said the platform is extensible. You can use the same data to your flows, and you could bring the data into your Sales Cloud, and you could just use that complete data unification of data model into different business processes as well. So now let's, so when you ask me a question, right? So Fanny, can you explain what is Data Cloud for admins for no low code, and what is Data Cloud for a pro code? So the no code, low code option is something that Data Cloud admin, the data engineer, can go and then set up and do a configuration of entire Data Cloud, which is nothing but creating of a data stream. A data stream is nothing but to connect one source of systems called AWS, Google Cloud Storage, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Commerce Cloud. So that's we're calling as a data stream. And you could design the data models, and the same person design calculated insights, data actions, user experiences, all those things you can do as an admin can do all this admin activities. And the same administrator can automate to bring the data model of Data Cloud and design the flows. And he's the one who can leverage data actions to bring the platform events and then create some great flow actions to mature different processes. And of course, the same person who can does the packaging for deploying your Data Cloud components, which is nothing but your data streams, your calculated insights, your segmentations, your data models, everything. He can go and then deploy from your one CDP org to the another CDP orgs, where you can leverage to second generation packages. I'll talk about what is second generation packages as well. So it's one of the latest deployment concept that especially using a lot for ISP partners, but it is can be leveraged by ours as well. But you just need a partner access for that. But when it comes to a pro coder, I've seen many of the people who does coding all the time, and for them, this session is especially helpful for them to connect the data cloud data model using queries, and you could design. There are some predefined methods available, and where you could write your SOQLs, and then you could expose the connect API to bring all this Apex, all this data from our data cloud data model using async Apex triggers and invocable actions. And there are some limitations, especially on so with this, when you're trying to write a query, so we can't able to do any group by or any more manipulations kind of a data. There are some limitations, especially on writing a query to get the data cloud data model data and accessing through an Apex and then build all the data via Lightning Web Component. So there are some limitations, but that doesn't stop our innovations. We always find something great, right, when we are a developer. And the same developer can build APIs and SDKs. He can go and then consumes direct APIs to connect APIs, metadata APIs, web and mobile SDKs, which can connecting different systems of websites, mobile apps, and you can does plenty of things as well. So that's the difference between a data cloud admin versus a data cloud developer. And in my scenario, if you look the left-hand side, when you start data cloud, the left-hand side can serve 80% of the work. The right-hand side can serve 20% of the work. So that's called data cloud. That's where you have seen plenty of opportunities in the data cloud in the next coming generations and the next coming years as well. So that gives a lot of power for the people who go and then earn some good data cloud documentation, go through it, and then find some useful things, and then bring the values for your company as well as your own career growth as well. Yeah. So I talk about the APIs, what kind of APIs is available in data cloud. If you look at in the left hand side, so if you would love to test something, I would always recommend to have a Postman, and then you could spin up your Postman and then start building your data cloud APIs, which is nothing but your direct APIs, metadata API, calculated insights API, query ingestion APIs, streaming APIs, the profile API, connect API. So you do plenty of APIs have been available where you can go and then try to leverage these APIs for on a day-to-day use cases. We'll talk about what UAB API can leverage, which use case, and all this stuff in the next slides. When coming to the current data cloud API libraries and SDKs, when I would love to divide in a simple table. If you look at API standpoint, there is an ingestion API, which is very, very most important thing, which you could inject the data, especially on streaming kind of an events, because ingestion API is the one that we could leverage for bringing the streaming data from websites and mobiles. That we could talk in the next series, how we can do step-by-step process. And some of the other APIs, especially on the Connect API for connecting our own data cloud data models through an Apex, through a Lightning flows, through a platform event. So we could create our API. And before that, there are some steps involved in order to connect the API into data cloud, especially from Salesforce, or Salesforce native Salesforce, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud. And there is metadata APIs, calculated APIs, query and profile APIs available, which we could talk about what it can helpful for our day-to-day use cases. But when it comes to SDKs, there are two SDKs, one with Interactions SDK, especially when you're trying to integrate with your websites. And there is one more for mobile apps that you would love to integrate mobile app and bring the streaming data into data cloud, which is nothing but Engagement Mobile Software Development Kit. We calling as typically EMSD. That's it called Engagement Mobile Software Development Kit. So these are all some of the APIs and SDKs which are currently available inside the data cloud, which you could access different resources. Let's talk about the main important ingestion API. So the ingestion API, it's complete principles of REST API, but it has two patterns. The ingestion API has two patterns, one with streaming, other one with the batch. Because there are some use cases where you want to bring through a streaming API, and there are some use cases where you want to bring the batch API. So it supports this, the ingestion API supports both patterns, both streaming and batch API. And streaming API, so that you should understand what streaming API does in a better way. So it's just like a fire and forgot kind of a pattern. So there's a biggest question saying it's so funny. Even platform events also does the same thing. Yeah, it does the same thing because it's also just based on RESTful API. And the streaming API especially is suitable for the micro batches of a data, small micro batches of a data. And if you feel your websites have chunks of users have been coming, like if you have an e-commerce website, I think you have to go with a different approach altogether. But if you have a small micro batches of data, the interactions with the users have been traveling or landing into your website, which is quite less number, then you could prefer this streaming API is one of the thing. And the other thing especially we have is batch API. When you're talking about moving large amounts of data on a predefined intervals of time, so especially on the legacy data where you could export data off peak hours, right? So ideally I would recommend to do all the bulk operations at a nightly batch time to pick all the feed the data into your data cloud. So that's two types of data. So when you're trying to enable under the data stream, which is called ingestion API, so you have an option to choose whether you want a streaming API or the batch API. And the only thing that it does is the data which is processing in an asynchronous way, which is on hourly cadence. So that's what the batch API does for ingestion API pattern. But you would love to see how the entire implementation steps is going to be happening when we're trying to design any ingestion API kind of a thing. So number one, what you have to do is, so you have to set up an ingestion API connector. So what you have to do is when you go to the Salesforce, unfortunately, I don't have an org currently. My orgs have been expired. But I'll give some references later point of time how you can connect on a step-by-step process. It is very simple. So what you have to do is you log in with the data cloud, and then you click on setup, and then you have an option in the setup. You can go to the left-hand side search option, where in that you just enter ingestion API. So where you'll have an option ingestion API connection. You can go to the ingestion API connection, and then you can go and then upload your schema file. The schema file is nothing but what kind of attributes you would love to bring into data cloud. So in documentation of data cloud, you could see the schema file structure, where you could use the same structure for designing your data attributes and the relevant structure, and just upload that schema file and then click on save. Once you click on save, you have to go back to your data stream, click on new data stream, and then you have to choose the respective ingestion API connector. And then once you connect the ingestion API connector, it automatically populates attributes, and you can just click on save and submit. So once you've done the submission of your data stream, then automatically in a complete, based on the streaming based on the pattern you have been designed, the data will automatically comes into your data stream, which you're calling as the data stream objects, the DSOs. So that's how you can do it. But I would always recommend to do this through a first payload. You could just leverage your third-party API testing tools. So either you could leverage Postman, you could leverage any lint, JSON lint, or any other tools which you could test your entire request, which include authentication and all the stuff. So that's how you can start connecting your ingestion API, and then so it supports all these actions. You have an option to insert the records, but the only thing is you don't have an option to upsert or anything as such. You could only option to insert records or delete records with this supported actions of streaming ingestion. And then the entire payload structure is in JSON, that what I've said, and the response status codes have been designed for 202, which is accepted response, that is indicates that the success response. So it is very simple implementation steps which you have go and then try to do. But in documentation, there has given us step-by-step process and the structure of a file, how it look like, and that will take you to complete documentation, which gives a lot of ideas, and then you can easily do it as well. When it comes to bulk works with a different kind of a concept. So the same thing, you could prepare a CSV file, and then you have to create a job. In Data Cloud, you have an option which you can go and then create a job, and then you can create a job and then perform the job. So just upload the CSV file, and then you can it can process the data from your job, and you have an option that you can connect with either SFTP or any other endpoints where you could bring the data into Data Cloud, where it will give an option for upload the data from different server, and then that gives to bring all this data of bulk ingestion pattern into Data Cloud as well. So the same thing, the key points, especially on the bulk ingestion or CSV, the file must be an UTF-8 format. The size of the file should be 150 MB. If it's more MB, then I think you should divide the file into multiple chunks. And it supports certain formats of RFC, and it always treats the empty values as the null values. And especially if you have any patch semantics, the patch semantics won't be supported, and upsert records are processed as a full replacement for this bulk ingestion, right? So especially when you're trying on doing implementations for synchronous validation, I always recommend to have, when you are doing a development phase, the number one recommendation from my side is to leverage Postman API, and then verify the payload, verify the validation first, and then if anything fail validation comes with the failure regions, just try to check with the payload before trying to connecting with the data cloud. And then once the validations have been passed, I think probably good to go with this options. But try to do test in Postman first, and then before come to the data cloud, so that you'll have much idea that what's happening, right? So this is the schema file, how you could design your schema file of the ingestion API concept. So it completely works with an open API specification using YAML, or you could design the file with .yaml, and then so the parts that what you're trying to connect using Postman is, you could just use a post method, delete method in the post method, which you could do all these methods, and then you could use the respective API connect name that what you have been designed, and then you could define what is an object name that you're trying to insert the data into, nothing but the data stream. And from authentication, it always have an open OAuth 2.0 protocol. You have to follow some sort of named credential kind of a concept. And they do have a complete JWT barrier concept where we can go either one, and then we could be able to connect with data cloud systems. So, and the payloads and the limits we have, there are some supported file types, integer, string number, and the data formats, the request size limits, and retry logic always recommended if anything which is failure. And the nested objects weren't supported currently with this releases. Always the responses. We do have a response, especially on this ingestion API, 202, 204. These are all some of our standard error modeling mechanisms, which is designed by international standards for APIs. And this is common across all the platforms. So if anything which you found, so these are all some of the reasons which you can found in Data Cloud documentation as well, right? So that's what the ingestion API would be, and it has many features, but connection, I believe, is something that which is required some sort of a time, but it's simple, but you have to follow some steps. At the same time, you should follow testing procedure, which you can run through some JSON-lint or any other Postman kind of a tool in order to verify the payloads, and at the same time, in order to test the connections, in order to find out the authentications, all the protocols have to be followed. Let me check any questions before I jump into any other stuff. I'm new to Data Cloud. Can we get a Data Cloud org for it? Sorry, Usman. So Data Cloud org is not going to be available as a free. If you are a partner with your Salesforce, and probably they'll give you a 30-day trial org for you to play around Data Cloud. But again, in the trial org, there are some lot of limitations, especially which you cannot connect multiple source systems, and you cannot see some great results, especially. But you could see something, yeah. Is there any bulk API? So Preston, the one which I've told, the ingestion API, the pattern, bulk API, so you could leverage that for your complete use case. What sort of governor limits apply to this API? So the only governor limits that can apply, so I don't see any kind of a governor limits. The only limits that what has been happening with this, the performances, when you have when you look at the streaming API, where I've said if you have low chunks of data, low sort of interactions with your websites or anything, so just go with this streaming API. But if you feel something which you need, you can go with the batch API for high. But as I've stated earlier, the batch has their own limits. The 150 is the size that what you can go and then try to do the file size, and then it could be able to success as well. Do we have any trailhead of all this? Yes, there is a trailhead which is available for Data Cloud, but you will not get all these kind of modules, but there are some certain good documentations available in trailhead where you can go and then play around it. I think I do have some webinar series which I can share you. Probably it can help you out for a step-by-step process. Can we have upsert in any API or only limitations in ingestion API? So there is an upsert, especially if you look at the second option, the batch supports upsert. Every time when you do upsert, it'll create a new stream altogether. So it'll just go and then updates records with the new values. What are the standard objects in Data Cloud? ANSI, there's a documentation especially on the standard objects. Data Cloud documentation. If you can go to the Data Cloud documentation, so Data Cloud has their own objects, especially consent objects, and they have email, phone, address, engagement data objects. There's plenty of objects available. Yeah. Yes, Lakshmi. So PLC is a partner learning camp, Vikas. So if you're a partner with Salesforce, you have an option to visit the partner learning camp through a partner credentials, where you can go and then look at the Data Cloud documentation, where you can find a lot of resources for step-by-step. You could find the ingestion, you could find all these development concepts, the admin concepts, and the segmentation concepts, all the Data Cloud concepts end-to-end, which you could see under PLC. But you need to be a partner of Salesforce in order to get all these assets. Yep. So how can I use the PLC? I think if you're a Salesforce partner, probably you can reach out to your account executive that can help you out for your partner manager, where the partner manager will help you out how you could leverage the partner learning camp and how you could get an access to partner program benefits and everything. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the session. So these are all some of the payloads and limits, as I've told. The request size limit for single request for streaming pattern, 200 KB. And for request size for bulk pattern is 150 MB per job. And if you look at the paths, especially on authentication, the schema files, and there is one which I've kept the key points on the limitations. I'm going to share this deck with your team, so probably you can go and then verify each and every stuff that what we've been designed. I'm always reachable in LinkedIn, so probably you could put a message that whatever the questions you have, so I'm happy to help you out as well. Right. Let's talk about something which, yes, please.
This is Sakti here. Is there any trial mix available to self-learning?
Yeah,
or only from the PLC?
No, there is Sakti. So I'm gonna showcase at the end of the session. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
I'm gonna showcase everything at the end of the session. Some of the resources, the best thing which you can go and then try to learn. Yeah. Let's talk about some great stuff, especially, there's a question we had talked, right? Can we be able to bring Data Cloud data model inside your flows? And can we be leverage the complete actions? Can we leverage Apex actions? Can we leverage data actions? Yes, of course. There's a process which you have to follow in order to connect your Data Cloud to your Salesforce org. So especially when you look at these kind of things, as I've told, there are some steps required to connect your Data Cloud org, which is nothing but your own Salesforce. Consider there are always different kind of strategy which is going with your organizations, right? Someone says that I have a Service Cloud org. Can I purchase Data Cloud org separately? Okay, can I purchase Data Cloud org separately and connect Data Cloud org to bring all the data cloud data model? I can bring all the calculated insights. Can I bring all this segmentized data into my Sales Cloud, right? So there's a process. So this is a process and how it works. But there are questions where, funny, I don't want to do that. I have already a Sales Cloud, Service Cloud org. I just want to install the entire Data Cloud package, something like this, entire Data Cloud package within my Service Cloud. So there are two kind of mechanisms, like, so based on certain customer strategies where you could follow any one of them. It doesn't harm anything. The only thing is because always people, because Data Cloud is something that the data people have been going to access, and a lot of complaints, a lot of security complaints, a lot of documentations, because it's a data, right? The Data Cloud platform, so it contains a lot of sensitive data which is going to be sitting on your Data Cloud org. So I always recommend to Data Cloud org to be sits outside of Salesforce, because there are typical security compliance problems, typical data, because there are data engineers who will access the platform, data aware specialists who will access your platform, and there are people who want it to be, because it's always good, right? Because you sit your entire Data Cloud to work with the separate kind of a thing, and you always have a connectors to connect with Sales Cloud to bring all your Sales Cloud transactional data back to your CDP or your Data Cloud. But the biggest question, you have a connector to bring the data into your Salesforce, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Experience Cloud, or Loyalty Cloud back to Data Cloud. But the question is, can we be able to connect data? I want to build a Lightning Web Component. Imagine I want to build a Lightning Web Component. And with the Lightning Web Component, I would love to build all the unified data of the Data Cloud persons. Yeah. So is it something that you could be achievable using out of the box? Yes or no? You cannot be able to do it through an out of the box connector, because always the data that what you have currently is always like push the data from Sales, Service, Loyalty Cloud to Data Cloud. It doesn't send the data of Data Cloud back to Sales, Service, Loyalty, and all this stuff, especially on the Salesforce org. What you have to do is you have to follow some procedures. You have to create a named credential authentication in order to access the Data Cloud. The number one step, you have to create your auth provider, and then you have to create your named credentials within the auth provider. And then, so what Apex does is when you write an Apex class, so I'm going to perform a call out to my credentials with my endpoint URL of the Connect API. And then I'm going to connect the Data Cloud and then bring all the necessary data elements. I'm going to write a query that what I required, some objects, and then bring the data back to my Lightning Web Component, and I'm going to display it. So this is a typical authentication model for any Salesforce platform who's going to work independently with the Data Cloud orgs. But when it comes to the people who already have a Data Cloud, who already have a Sales Service Cloud, and then they want to purchase the Data Cloud on top of Sales Service Cloud. So it's just a simple thing. You just leverage the Connect API CDP query that brings complete data fastly. It'll immediately get the data from your Apex callout and display into your Lightning Web Component. So because the Connect API will only work when connecting to CDP in the same instance, because this complete concept, how it works is you can complete. It is little because you don't require any authentication or anything because it has been provisioned within the same CRM instance, right? So it's up to the management and the strategies of what they follow. But fortunately, I've been working with 2 customers where both the customers, the Data Cloud has been out of the Salesforce orgs, and they have some reasons, especially on the security and compliance. So that's one of the reason which you could bring. That's how you should go and then talk to Data Cloud within the Salesforce, out of the Salesforce. Yeah. So there are some small things that you have to remember always when you're trying to connect using connected app. In the first phase, I've told you have to do a connected app here. The auth provider through your connected app. When you do connected app, so you always have to follow some certain principles and rules, especially on the callback side. So you should have give your you should have give your metadata of your CDP instance, where you have to put that into your callback URL for the Connect API, and then that talks and take care of everything in terms of bringing the data, what kind of essentials that you have been captured from Data Cloud org and all this stuff. So that's most important factor. This is one of the most important factor. So very, very important, callback URLs. So the next thing would be especially on the authentication provider. When you look at the consumer key, consumer secret from all 2.0 protocols, so these 2 are main important factors where, apart from callback URL, so it always used for them to, connecting your app and bring the data into data Salesforce, and the endpoints, the tokenization and everything should be in a proper authorization kind of concepts. And the default scope always should kept as the complete scope provider CDP query API. If you look at the scope that what we have been designed, refresh token full copy query API. So that's what you have to keep the default scope in order to bring. I would share this deck. I would think let's just use all the endpoint URL, token endpoint, default scope, at the same time callback URLs, OAuth, existing links, test only. So I want you to leverage all this URLs exactly that what we've been recommended here. It's always nice to have as well, because most of the things that what we've seen is troubleshooting this kind of an elements. So this is name and credentials. Everyone knows how the name and credentials works for a simple authentication. So it's because your auth provider, CDP Connect API, and so don't worry. So don't confuse. This is auth provider, the one which you have created. Once you create auth provider, you have to come and create your name and credentials, because it's one time. Always as a best practice for any enterprise people. So let's try to go with the name and credentials rather than creating your own connected API, put that into custom settings or somewhere, and then hard coding into your programmatic elements for call out of your Apex and all this stuff. Let's try to leverage name and credentials for all the time. Once you've done this step and you're done, so what you can do is you can retrieve all your data using Connect API. You could use the metadata types, and you could. I'm going to talk about what is how the Connect API and all the works. And this brings all the data of your custom metadata for your entire data cloud, data models, your SSOT, single source of truth objects, and all the stuff. So, yep. So there's one more way where you can perform. So if people feels that, okay, a funny name and credentials is something that we should be always focused on, but is there anything that you could do it? Yes, leverage custom metadata types, leverage custom settings where you could create this kind of a metadata where you could leverage inside your call out process as well. This is one more way. And this is example call out, like how we can call out your HTTP request, which you could set the endpoint and then put the method and retrieve the responses and then log. I always refer to logs and responses in custom object to find out the best possible options, what went wrong and all this stuff. Where you have a glance and the visibility from the admin perspective, what went wrong when you're trying to access any data cloud data sources, right? So that is one of the area. And overall things keep in mind, especially on connecting Salesforce to Data Cloud through an Apex programming, through an APIs and all this stuff. Consuming Data Cloud is in a core, especially is a pull model. It's opposite to push, especially displaying data, whether how you want to display your data. Data Cloud provides out-of-the-box app builder components, but at the same time, if customer comes up with building some Lightning components, of course, you can go and then design your leveraging standard Lightning component of app builder, which is given by Data Cloud package, or you can build your own custom Lightning web component. Be mindful of some limits and restrictions, especially on accessing via API. I'm going to share that limits. I don't have full limits, but there's documentation, which I'm going to share, especially on the concurrency of request at the same time volume as well, right? So that's how this connection of Apex works. And so this is one of the area where people really wanted to learn something out of which from a native core perspective. Yep. So that's for Apex. So let's talk about the web interactions. So the web interactions is something which is something quite would love to talk about it. So how we could do all the web interactions. So let's go to we have an interactions SDK. So we do have Data Cloud developer guide. So if anyone has any references, where I'm going to put that into our chart as well. So this is the Data Cloud developer guide. So one source of documentation across all your programmatic access of Data Cloud information, the material sources, everything. And here you have an option to connect the data. This is the process where you can go and then connect your web interactions, which we can calling as a Salesforce interaction SDK. This is the SDKs where you could connect your SDK method to capture the web interactions. If you love to integrate websites to bring the interactions back to a Data Cloud. So this SDK will captures, collects, and tracks code of the entire data from your web interactions and sends the information back to CDP, which is Data Cloud. So this information can be, you can use and compile complete behavior profiles of your website visitors. You could segment audiences and you can build integrations as well, right? So you always have some sort of examples where, so where you could leverage this interaction, especially. Let's talk about so there are some pre-built interactions types available when you're trying to find the code. There are some pre-built codes available, especially on the cart interaction, the catalog interactions, and your order interactions, where you could use your all e-commerce websites, right? So this is the Data Cloud interactions SDK, and make sure when you're trying to pull the data into your Data Clouds, you have to leverage this code concept, because Salesforce interactions is a method which you can talk to what kind of data that you love to bring. These are all the attributes within this method. Catalog type ID attribute, which is description, the name of the catalog. So at the same time, the consent is much more important. So this is where there are some of the visitors where they'll come and lock your consent, right? When you do cookie tracking and all this stuff. So when they accept the cookie tracking, where you have to ingest, where you have to call this method, which is called the consents. So this will captures who is the provider, what is the purpose of, and what is the status, where you could go and then build these two or some of the interactions which you have to design in your internal code. And especially the sitemap. So you have to design the sitemap. So there is an example which is given, especially how to design the sitemap and all this stuff. So this Salesforce Interaction SDK sitemap is a configuration-driven layer which you could talk to your website. So you have to design the sitemap and then deploy it to your data cloud. There are some steps, especially when you're trying to integrate with data cloud, from especially on the websites. So I would love to talk about one interaction, especially. So let's talk about a cart interaction, right? When you're a customer, when you're trying to customer. So recently we just gone through, this is one of the example we have been implemented. So a customer will build a website, e-commerce website. So, and then the customers went to the e-commerce website, and then he went to us, because the entire website is, we design our own infrastructure and our own platform, but it's not outside of Salesforce. It's completely outside of Salesforce. So because here what you have done is, customer went onto the website, and then he had been choosing all the products, and then he went and add those items into the cart, which is nothing but a shopping cart. So once we added the items into shopping cart, so we already have a sitemap. So what it does is, and we have an interaction SDK as well. So what it does is, it captures all the events. The interaction that what have been captured is one with out of the box capturing when the customer is adding and removing the items from the cart, and at the same time they're sending the data to data cloud, which is add to cart data. So this is a kind of a data that you could go and then send kind of a data and see the line item. You could send the respective name. You can calling as an add to cart, and then you could add some line item details about your catalog object type, object ID, quantity, price, currency, attributes. You can add some different attributes of an additional attribute, like if someone wants to do some gift wrapping or anything as such. So those kind of things that you could design using Web Interactions SDK. So you have complete structure, what kind of event specifications is going to be happen, or what is the event structure. You can go through the event structure, interactions, consent, page view, source. You could capture all these interactions, user interactions, the time interactions, sources, page view, all this engagement data. And if you look at some of the out of the box that what I've been talking about, cart interaction, catalog interaction, order interaction, these three are something which you could leverage out of the box through an SDK. And if you look at the SDK, that what they're capturing, an event which contains both behavioral and profile data, because we're capturing the profile data as well as the behavioral data using your one of the method, which is send event. And this is how the event structure look like, the interaction and the source data where we've been coming from, and the user profile data and the consent data. So all is going to be one file, right? So if you look at the cart interactions, we'll talk about how you could design the cart interactions, what kind of attributes that you need to require in order to be design your complete file, the JSON file which you could upload into your data cloud to bring the data, right? So these are all some of the event specifications which are available out of the box through our Web SDK, where you can go and then try to design the complete web interactions. So at the same time, we do have our mobile interactions, especially when you're trying to integrate your mobile applications. So these integrations where you can use one most important factor for both the thing, the specific tenant specific endpoint. So when you're trying to access some of the data, so what you can do is, if you can go to the setup of data cloud CDP home, in the down you can see some specific tenant endpoint. So where you can go and then leverage that tenant specific endpoint to be embedded into one of your if you look at Experience Cloud sites, right? So we have a concept where we could add some certain CDN kind of an elements to capture some data, especially on these page views or some of the interactions. So the CDN, this is the CDN, actually the tenant specific endpoint is CDN endpoint, where you could use this to bring some of the data from your websites and mobile apps as well. And this is how you could go and then leverage your SDK operations from an iOS standpoint as well as from an Android standpoint. So there is step-by-step implementation has been given for, and you could download the complete binaries of Data Cloud modules for iOS and Android. And if you would love to see how is the schema mapping could be designed for complete mobile, this is how it looked like. So some of the engagement data forms, some of the profile data forms, you could just use this complete events, which could turn to your mobile app interactions, and some of the data which you could automatically populate of the Data Cloud module for engagement mobile SDK fields called channel longitude, longitude. And there are some schema fields for naming rules, which you could just use these options, as I've said, right? The gift wrapping options. Want these things you can do. So this is a complete one of the SDK, which is ESME. We can calling as an engagement mobile SDK that you could integrate your complete mobile apps with Data Cloud. And it does to capture the real-time behavioral as well as demographical data from the customers, from an app standpoint, from a screen navigation standpoint. So every data that what we are bringing is to create some unified profile of the customers to enable some high personalized engagement across multiple channels using Marketing Cloud. Yeah. So that's how these two, especially these two interactions is going to be helpful. And it really makes sense, and it has all the documentation. So if you feel anything that you want some sort of insights, you just reach out to me. I'll help you out for connecting all these tools, right? The biggest question, so funny how we can connect MuleSoft, right? So there is a process which you have to follow for MuleSoft. It's always I recommend for bulk ingestion or streaming ingestion. So there is a step setup which you could given on step-by-step process of how the data will be loading into a Data Cloud. And I already talked about difference between bulk versus streaming ingestion APIs and some examples. And you could just start doing it. If you look at bulk ingestion and you have what kind of jobs, how to prepare a CSV file, some of the example of CSV file, how to create a job, upload, close, delete, all these things. So if anyone wants some documentation, some MuleSoft connecting with Data Cloud, this is best practice where you can go and then try to connect. And at the same time, you have your MuleSoft connector, and there's a complete documentation which is connected with CDB connector 1.0 for a MuleSoft, where you can begin with this step-by-step process. They're given different connection types with JWT or username password authentication protocols. That's how this entire developer documentation help you out. At the same time, this is ingestion data, but there are some data, especially for modeling. As one of the person asked me, what are the standard objects available in Data Cloud? So we look at complete data model objects from account standpoint to different consent, your DMOs, your email engagement data, your flow loyalties data, marketing data, your party data, product data, shopping data, everything. So this entire DML data model of Data Cloud design using a complete standard of industry best practices and the principles, which is completely a cloud information model stack that gives the best of best. So we are never miss anything. The same question, these are all some of the standard objects, funny, but can we be able to create custom objects with custom fields? Yes, of course, you have. You have flexibility, you can create a custom object, and you can create a custom fields inside Data Cloud. Yep. So that's how those interactions will especially works. And the biggest question, can we retrieve a metadata? Can we query the data at the initial sessions? I talked about multiple APIs, right? Profile API, how to retrieve the metadata, how to query data using query, how to bring the record IDs. So this is how we could bring the data with different properties. So there are some endpoint URLs with profile data. You just need to define the data model name, pass the attribute of data model name and ID, where you will get all the data extracted, because this is something that you could access directly from Salesforce to bring the data from Data Cloud. And if you would love to bring the data from Data Cloud from other systems, extensibility, where you could leverage these APIs to connect and then bring the data from your Data Cloud org to your third-party systems as well. So there are some limits. As one of the person asking me, so what are the limits of API, especially on Data Cloud, in order to retrieve data from or connecting Data Cloud? There are some profile API queries per day, and for insights APIs and query and inside API concurrent inbound request. So these are all some of the limitations, and APIs are available. If you want to see much more things, you could look at the limits and the recommendations from a Salesforce standpoint. So these are all some of the limits, and so each and everything you can see the data ingestion guidance limits and your S3 JCS bulk ingestion limits and SFTP ingestion limits, data transformation limits. So I'm going to paste that into Data Cloud org as well. Yeah, so these are all some of the high-level development items, but I would love to talk about a couple of others. So now we discussed about web interactions, mobile interactions. Now the question that we discussed, right? So can we be able to access Apex within the data cloud or outside of data cloud? We have shown how we can authenticate. Then you just use our brains of Apex and SQL to bring the data from our relational database, from our traditional database. So you just write a method of connect API, CDP query row, and then just pull the respective interactions of any other web interactions of respective data stream and pass ID of the data stream, and then get the query, and then use the query to display inside your Lightning components. Remember, always your DML data model objects starts with SSOT, which is called single source of truth underscore. All the fields, all the objects are starts with your SSOT. That's a simple identification for you to identify whether this is a data model object or not. And there are something where people wanted to query using calculated insights. Yes, you can do it. You could just go and then query the calculated insights. There is a feature available especially on calculated insights where you can create with an SQL, and I could just bring all the engagement scores or metrics, everything in inside your calculated insights. Yeah. You just go to the data cloud, and then you can click on new calculated insights, and then you can write a query. So it automatically populates your data. So that's one of the area. And there are some data cloud invocable actions, especially when someone asks me data ingestion, especially on CRM, S3 data streams, all the actions, all the limitations, all the things that's already been available in data cloud, which are already given some links. So there are some of the limits which is available, and the release dates currently has been happening for data cloud. So especially on ingesting data from CRM data stream, S3 data stream, publish calculated insights, trigger identity resolution jobs. So all these are comes with your invocable actions when you're trying to use an Apex. And there are all some of the limits where you could bring it down. Yeah. So when it comes to deployment and packaging, so a typical data cloud admin, as I always prefer to have packaging. So you have a concept of packaging, data cloud packaging, data cloud insights, and you can call it as data kits, packaging and data kits. So you use these packaging and data kits to deploy your entire data cloud metadata back to your one of the CDP org to the other CDP org. At the same time, you could use the data kits to bring data from your some of the calculated insights data, which is designed in data cloud, where you would love to bring the data cloud back to AWS S3 location and CRM location, and you could send the data back to corresponding Salesforce orgs as well. That is one of the great stuff, but it limited to some of the systems. You could send some of the segmentized data, calculated insights data back to Salesforce, B2C Commerce Cloud, and AWS S3 locations as well. And especially when someone build a deployment kind of a concept, like people will create a scratch orgs and then they'll create a second generation packages. So the second generation packages are completely a CLI kind of a concepts where it just do a fast deployment kind of techniques. You can create a scratch org and then you can do complete, and then you could deploy using second generation packages from deploying your entire data cloud components to one org to another org. But currently, this second generation package is currently available for only ISV partners. The scratch org creation, second generation packages, these two are currently available for only ISV partners. Currently, that is what initially I've told. So because they have the complete stack of ISV product suite, which comes with LMA license manager applications, and they have the complete org stack where they can create scratch orgs, and then 2GPs will quickly works with applications to deploy to because they are the one who develop a lot of applications and then move to Apex Exchange, right? So they want to upgrade their packages all the time. So when it comes to working with the continuous deployments of packaging, so Salesforce always recommending for 2GPs, second generation packages for deployments for any upgradable component, especially on the managed package side. That's where they're calling as ISV partners. But don't worry, for us, I think packaging and data kits is sufficient. Complete admin stuff. You don't need to build all this CSV files and all this stuff. You don't need to build any other configuration, meta files, or XML files to kickstart your process. That's the packaging and extensibility from a deployment standpoint. And so when it comes to the closing words, so I have two things that I would love to talk about. So the thing is, I know we're all developers. And we would do a lot of innovations while developing a lot of solutions using different components. As a developer, Data Cloud opens up a brand new world of real-time data, automation, and intelligence. So we all finally have access to more data than ever before, right? Because we are the one who designing creations of data innovators, and we be able to truly bring together tools that have been difficult to integrate in the past, right? Over the next few months, where Data Cloud bring up with different kind of concepts, like connecting Data Cloud to Snowflake, connecting Data Cloud to Amazon SageMaker for AI models. So it's been extending great things, and you could see some great capacity comes with Data Cloud. So you have data share concept, data space concept, and you could they're planning to integrate with every enterprise systems to make extensibility of leveraging data, and they have a plans to bring the same data model, bring the same Data Cloud data model, unification model that can be leveraged for other third-party people as well. Yeah. So that's where the developer are the key people who can work in the development aspects. I would truly request everyone to take a look about what's happening with the Data Cloud, and then you could initially grab the opportunities and then get through the gates where you could get plenty of opportunities in the next few quarters. So this is the resources, and I have been running this last from February onwards. So I have run the Data Cloud series, the webinar, which contains 16 to 17 sessions, which can talk about all the aspects, complete Data Cloud stack. We can talk about Data Cloud uh, connectors, Data Cloud segmentation, Data Cloud activation, development, admin, and everything. So it's completely like there are some real-time use cases which are talked about in this Data Cloud as well. Yeah. So I've just kept for 1 second here. You can just copy this QR code, and then you could be able to access the complete resources. Yeah. So that's all. Thank you for listening us with all this time. I've taken almost like 1 hour time, and I hope this session definitely helps some sort of glimpse on Data Cloud developer concepts. But if you can go through this, where you have an access of entire Data Cloud concepts, and I'm sure that you can go on and grab some opportunities. Right? Thank you, Shakti, for giving this opportunity again. And if any questions, I'm happy to help you out. And you can reach me in ways. Yeah.
Hi. Actually, yeah, one doubt I have, since
Yes.
my few friends are from data science field, one thing they used to tell me, like when they used to get a data, right? So it will be sometimes complete data as well, sometimes incomplete data as well, sometimes data in different formats, maybe in text format, maybe in audio format, maybe in video format. So in our Salesforce Data Cloud, do we have all the same features?
Uh, we do have all the features, because especially when you talk about so let's consider so when you're connecting one system, okay, when you bring the data, so the exponential data will automatically sync immediately from your source systems to Data Cloud.
Hmm.
Okay, so that is one great thing. If you feel any errors which comes out of the picture, so the only thing which is drawbacking is there are some error screen that Salesforce Data Cloud is building out. How many records have been processed, how many errors have been processed, what are all the error reason, and all this stuff, they're building it. But we do have a concept of Data Explorer inside Data Cloud that you could just put the data, when you design your data stream, right? So you just choose your data stream, and then you'll get the results of immediately with the navigation, the screen view concept. You could see the results upfront, what kind of data has been ingested into Data Cloud, how many number of records have been came, and then you could see all the visualization of your data model as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it has plenty of stuff actually. So it's been day to day is growing and then improvising the platform, especially on the limitations wise. It's massive, so it's one of the innovative, and it's going to change the next couple of months. It's going to change because if you look at the Salesforce is strongly recommending leveraging Data Cloud for many of the enterprise customers. At the same time, we were the people who have been designing a lot of POCs for checking the solutions as an SMEs, and then taking the feedback back to the product team to build a sustainable platform for managing and make customers feel happy from a marketer's perspective as well.
Just one more doubt, like being a new person in a data cloud, can you tell us any tools which is quite friendly? Means being a new person who came to ecosystem, we can go through it and we can utilize this quite easily compared to the complex ones.
Sure, definitely. So as I said initially, when is trail mix available, so this is one of the trail mix for data cloud, which you could start with different links, different modules, and if you ever imagine that, like so this is there are some different trail mixes available for data cloud. So there's a get to know Salesforce Data Cloud trial mix where you have different links all together, different modules where you can go through all the modules. And if you're a partner, I hope you're a partner with Salesforce. If not, these links will help you out. And there is one thing which I'm not sure whether you've been gone through my YouTube channel as well. So I'm not promoting anything here. Don't worry about it. So I'm just gonna give some glimpse about what we designed for. So there is a series that we've been designed for a data cloud, especially on end-to-end, what it does, what it help you out. So as a fresh guy like so you should understand a step-by-step process on data cloud, starting with get to know data cloud discovery, how to perform a discovery sessions, and then the data cloud use cases and benefits, and talk about data cloud connectors, data cloud data sources, what are the different data sources, how to connect with data cloud, and after that data ingestion, and after that we can talk about the data packaging, pricing strategies, development, admin, deployments, and everything. So we've covered all the aspects that what have been remembered. I wish that you could go, and then I wish everyone to go and then take a look. And then if you feel anything that has not been covered, I would plan to conduct many more sessions. But from your questions, Adish, like Vikas, so I would always prefer to have, take a look at trial mix, trial head, and look at the documentation. So as you and me, we are all in the same era. So the same thing, what I do is I'll follow blindly Salesforce documentation that gives most of my content. I'm no need to go any other place.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikas.
Yeah. Useful information, Pani. I think we are running out of the time. Once again, thank you, Panindra, for it's very informative altogether. You covered most of the data cloud features and where to start and how to implement with reference documents and videos. Hope this helpful to everyone to understand what's a data cloud for the developer perspective and where to start. Thank you all joining, and we'll see you in the next session. Thank you once again, and cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.